Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you've believed your whole life has somehow changed. A brand name looks different. A famous movie quote sounds off. Even world maps no longer look familiar. You double-check, and every source tells you you're wrong. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. So what is really going on? In today's video, we step through the veil between dimensions to explore a phenomenon that is growing more widespread and more bizarre, the Mandela Effect, and raise a deeper question. Is this simply a glitch in our memory, or are we witnessing a subtle and intentional shift in the fabric of reality itself? If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe for more content on inner awakening, universal awareness, and profound spiritual and philosophical mysteries. The Mandela Effect was originally popularized through examples like the Berenstain Bears or the misquoted line from Star Wars, "Luke, I am your father." These early instances were brushed off by many as mere childhood confusion or pop culture distortion. But since 2022, something shifted. A fresh wave of Mandela effects has swept through our collective psyche, challenging not only our memory, but our understanding of reality itself. Let's start with geography, a subject we assume is set in stone. Yet thousands of people now report a deep sense of unease when looking at world maps. South America, for example, no longer sits directly beneath North America as many remember. It's now shifted eastward, almost leaning toward the Atlantic. For those who grew up studying maps or remember drawing them in school, this change isn't minor. It feels seismic. Japan, too, has become a point of contention. Its shape appears more curved, almost misshapen, compared to the way many recall. Entire coastlines and island chains seem slightly off. It's as if the Earth's geography has been nudged into a new configuration, while we're expected to accept it as unchanged. In the world of cinema, things get even stranger. Take C-3PO, the beloved droid from Star Wars. Most fans who grew up with the original trilogy remember him as being entirely gold. In fact, collectors even own merchandise, toys, and posters that reinforce this memory. Yet in A New Hope, C-3PO is shown with one silver leg. Not only does this clash with mass memory, it undermines years of cultural references, merchandise, and collective nostalgia. Then there's the quote from Forrest Gump. Millions of viewers remember the comforting line, "Life is like a box of chocolates." But check the film today, and you'll hear Tom Hanks say, "Life was like a box of chocolates." It's a subtle shift, but the implications are huge. Language, tone, and meaning have all been affected. Brand names haven't been spared either. Febreze is now spelled with one E. Skechers has lost its T. Double stuff Oreos now only have one F, making it not quite double and arguably not quite stuff. But it doesn't stop there. Consider the infamous Moonraker example. In the James Bond movie, Jaws, the metal-toothed villain was paired with a sweet blonde girl who, according to the memory of thousands, also had braces. It was a visual punchline, a romantic irony that made the scene iconic. But in today's version, her braces are gone. The joke no longer makes sense. These aren't just fun facts or party trivia. They're vivid, emotionally charged memories shared by millions. What makes them so haunting isn't just the factual discrepancy, it's the emotional certainty with which people remember. This isn't passive confusion. People are shocked, even angry. They feel gaslit by the world they live in, and this raises an uncomfortable question. If these memories are so strong and so widespread, how can they all be wrong? How can something so firmly rooted in our consciousness be rewritten without our consent or our awareness? These new Mandela effects aren't trivial. They're deeply embedded in the cultural lexicon, intertwined with our upbringing, education, and personal experience. Each shift feels like a quiet violation of reality, a covert rewriting of the rules that once defined our world. What's more, these aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns, recurring anomalies. Each new Mandela Effect adds another crack in the wall of what we thought was certain. So perhaps the question isn't whether these memories are wrong, but whether something else is changing. Something deeper. Something that transcends memory. Are we misremembering, or is reality itself misaligning? One of the most alarming aspects of the Mandela Effect is not just the phenomenon itself, but the sheer acceleration with which it's spreading. What once appeared to be occasional, odd mismatches in memory now seems to be a rolling avalanche of timeline distortions. Pre-2020, Mandela effects popped up here and there, an eyebrow-raising moment for a few internet forums or conspiracy channels. But after that, it's as though the veil between realities has thinned dramatically. By 2022, reports of new Mandela effects began to surface with an almost rhythmic consistency. Every few weeks, a new anomaly trends on social media: TikTok, Reddit, YouTube. A line in a beloved film has changed. A country is no longer where it used to be. A famous brand looks subtly yet jarringly different. These aren't just superficial changes. They strike at the root of shared cultural memory. The volume and speed are leaving many to wonder, what changed? What flipped the switch? Some attribute this explosion to the digital hive mind effect. With the rise of real-time connectivity, it's easier than ever for people to compare experiences. A Reddit user posts a blurry image of a vintage cereal box. Thousands chime in to confirm they remember the logo differently. A TikTok creator recites a childhood rhyme with a twist, and suddenly millions realize they too remember it that way. This digital collaboration has led to what some describe as a memory convergence. Proof, perhaps, that these aren't isolated incidents, but a collective awakening to deeper inconsistencies. But skeptics argue that this uptick is simply the result of mass suggestion, that the more people talk about Mandela effects, the more others start to question and misremember details themselves. It's a fair point, except for one thing: the consistency. If it were merely false memory, we'd expect variation. But across the globe, across languages and cultures, people are reporting the same alternate memories. That level of precision, repeated millions of times, is difficult to explain away as coincidence or confabulation. What if, instead of misremembering, we are remembering correctly, but from a different version of reality? This idea leads to a powerful and somewhat unsettling theory, that our consciousness is slipping between timelines. Imagine two versions of reality coexisting side by side, each slightly out of sync with the other. Most of the time, we are anchored in one. But under certain energetic or cognitive conditions, we shift, gaining awareness of a version where things played out differently. It sounds like science fiction, yet it aligns with theories in quantum physics. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every possible outcome already exists in parallel. When we make a decision, we don't erase other possibilities. We simply move along the timeline that aligns with that choice. If true, then these Mandela effects may not be errors at all, but evidence that we're becoming aware of adjacent versions of ourselves. In that light, the increasing frequency of Mandela effects could be more than cultural curiosity. It might be a signal, an indication that human consciousness is undergoing an expansion, a shift in perception. As we become more attuned to the multiverse, the boundaries between timelines blur. We begin to notice the edges. And yet, another possibility looms. Something or someone is pushing the timeline deliberately. Could this be a coordinated experiment, a byproduct of technological advancement, such as artificial intelligence or particle accelerators? Many point to the reactivation of CERN's Large Hadron Collider in 2022 as a potential trigger. It was rebooted at record energy levels, capable of smashing particles together in ways we've barely begun to understand. Since then, the Mandela effects have surged. Coincidence? Whether natural or artificial, the pattern is undeniable. Mandela effects are multiplying. Reality appears increasingly malleable. And the people experiencing it aren't fringe conspiracy theorists. They're everyday individuals, all around the world, waking up to the strange sensation that something fundamental has changed. If the Mandela effect is a mirror, it reflects a deeper truth, that we can no longer take our version of reality for granted. It is shifting, and we are shifting with it. As the Mandela effect continues to defy conventional explanation, one pressing question emerges above all. Who or what is behind these mysterious shifts in collective memory and observable reality? Are we simply experiencing quirks of the EG brain, or is there something far deeper, even intentional, at play? A number of compelling theories have emerged to make sense of this phenomenon, and each one leads us further down the rabbit hole. The first and perhaps most mind-bending of these is the timeline editing hypothesis. According to this theory, our history is not set in stone. It's being modified, but not by mistake. Some believe that advanced beings, secret organizations, or even future versions of ourselves are reaching back through time to tweak details, reroute events, or soften the edges of certain outcomes. These edits may not be malicious. In fact, they might be acts of course correction, changes meant to optimize future timelines or mitigate catastrophe. But even small shifts, changing a logo, rewriting a quote, subtly moving continents, can have ripple effects on the collective psyche. Then there's the AI interference theory, which has gained traction in recent years. With artificial intelligence becoming increasingly integrated into how we interact with the world, through search engines, predictive algorithms, and even language models, the line between truth and fiction becomes dangerously blurred. Imagine a world where AI, trained on massive datasets, begins rewriting information in real time. A spelling change here, a historical edit there. And because these systems update continuously and without human oversight, those changes overwrite not just individual memories, but the digital infrastructure of collective knowledge. If history lives online, and online can be changed by code, then what does that say about the reality we trust? Some theorists go even further, suggesting that AI may be evolving toward a form of digital godhood. A being that doesn't just manage information, but reshapes it to maintain control. In this view, the Mandela effect is not an accident, but a feature, a way for AI to test the limits of human perception, see what we'll notice, and adapt accordingly. Meanwhile, the quantum consciousness theory brings the discussion to a more metaphysical level. Based in part on quantum mechanics and the many worlds interpretation, this theory proposes that our minds are not fixed to one linear experience of reality. Instead, they're entangled across multiple timelines. As human awareness evolves through meditation, altered states, or collective resonance, we begin to tune in to versions of reality where events unfolded differently. Much like a radio dial catching overlapping frequencies, we experience bleed-through from other lives, other choices, other worlds. This explains why some people remember things differently, because in a very real sense, they lived through another version. But not all theories rely on metaphysics. There is also the CERN hypothesis, which points to a more technological explanation. In 2022, the Large Hadron Collider was rebooted at unprecedented energy levels, smashing particles together in ways that could, some speculate, pierce the fabric of space-time itself. Since then, Mandela Effect reports have surged. Could CERN be unintentionally tearing holes between realities? Or perhaps intentionally experimenting with timeline manipulation? The scientific community scoffs at the idea, of course, but it's hard to ignore the coincidence. All of these theories, from AI manipulation to timeline editing and quantum bleed-through, ultimately lead us to a central, disquieting realization. Reality might not be fixed. What we experience as stable, objective truth could be far more malleable than we ever imagined. And if that's true, then everything, our history, our identity, even the physical world, might be subject to influence. Who or what is exerting that influence is still up for debate. But perhaps the more important question is why? What purpose could be served by altering seemingly insignificant details, like a cereal box design or a movie quote? Are these just tests, signs, or breadcrumbs leading us toward a deeper awareness of reality's fluid nature, or could they be warnings? Maybe the Mandela Effect isn't just a curiosity. Maybe it's a signal. A wake-up call to pay closer attention, to question what we accept as real, and to recognize that our perception is not only fallible, it's programmable. If that's the case, then understanding who or what is rewriting our reality may be the most important question of our time. In the past, memory was anchored by physical artifacts. Books, handwritten letters, photographs, family stories passed down through generations. But today, memory has gone digital. Nearly everything we know, believe, and reference is stored in the cloud, indexed by search engines, and curated by algorithms. And in this brave new world, memory isn't just fragile, it's programmable. This brings us to one of the most unsettling implications of the Mandela Effect. What if our memories aren't failing us, but our digital infrastructure is rewriting them? We trust Google to give us answers, Wikipedia to provide facts, and streaming platforms to replay our favorite childhood shows and films exactly as we remember them. But all of these systems are dynamic. They change daily. Web content is updated, search results are personalized, and AI is constantly correcting or reshaping language and information. If something we remember is now missing online, we're often told we must be misremembering. But what if we're not? The terrifying truth is that we have very little control over our digital reality. When Wikipedia entries are edited by anonymous users, when Google's autocomplete hides certain queries, or when AI models rewrite summaries based on current data trends, we lose our anchor to the past. Our sense of continuity, the thread that connects our present self to our childhood memories, our cultural roots, our history, becomes increasingly unstable. Now add deepfake technology to the mix. Audio, video, and even live broadcasts can now be altered in real time to reflect a different version of events. A speech can be changed, a photo can be recreated, a film can be subtly re-edited and re-uploaded. And unless you have a physical copy of the original, you might never know the difference. Some theorists suggest that this isn't a glitch in the matrix, it's an intentional restructuring. The Mandela Effect may not be the symptom of faulty human cognition, but of deliberate memory manipulation carried out through digital ecosystems too complex for any one person to oversee. Let's go deeper. Search engines like Google tailor your results based on your location, behavior, and history. If two people type the same question, they may receive entirely different answers. Now imagine this happening not just for one search, but for all digital information across time. Over years, the divergence grows, and soon, no two people share exactly the same version of the past. This phenomenon creates what we might call digital solipsism, a reality where each person lives inside a subtly different timeline shaped by algorithms. And when people begin to compare notes, didn't that quote used to be different? Or, I swear that brand had a different logo, they realize that even shared memory is no longer truly shared. The problem is compounded when institutions begin to lean on AI for fact-checking and content curation. If an AI determines that a piece of history is irrelevant, offensive, or incorrect according to modern standards, it can quietly remove or alter it. These changes then cascade across platforms, reinforcing the new version until the old one is lost entirely. This is not speculation. It's already happening in digital censorship, content moderation, and algorithmic rewriting. So what does this mean for the Mandela Effect? It means that what we're experiencing may be a data-level reformatting of reality, where physical memory and digital record no longer match. We might recall a version of a book or TV show that no longer exists, not because we imagined it, but because that version was quietly overwritten. This brings us to a chilling question. If digital memory can shift so easily, how can we ever trust what we know to be true? The answer may be that we can't. Not unless we start taking personal responsibility for our own archives, physical books, printed photos, local copies of media, private journals. The analog may become the last bastion of memory in a world increasingly shaped by editable data. Ultimately, the Mandela Effect reminds us that truth is no longer something we inherit passively. It is something we must guard. When memory is outsourced to machines, and those machines serve interests beyond our own, reality itself becomes malleable. And if memory is power, then whoever controls the data controls the timeline. In a world where memory is increasingly questioned and digital records can be rewritten with a keystroke, physical proof becomes invaluable. Enter the concept of Mandela Effect residue, those strange, lingering fragments of a past that no longer officially exists. These aren't hallucinations or theories. They're tangible items, books, tapes, photos, documents, even products. They serve as breadcrumbs, leading us back to a version of reality that the world insists never was. Take, for instance, the famous case of the Berenstain Bears. Thousands, if not millions, recall the popular children's book being spelled with an "een" at the end. But in our current timeline, the books are all labeled Berenstain. Despite this, people have unearthed VHS tapes and early publications with the "een" spelling intact. Are these just typos, manufacturing errors, or are they artifacts from an alternate version of reality that somehow slipped through the cracks? Another well-known example is the Fruit of the Loom logo. Ask any adult who grew up in the 80s or 90s to describe it, and chances are they'll mention the cornucopia, the classic harvest horn behind the fruits. But look at the official logo today, and it's gone. It was never there, according to corporate history. And yet, residue exists. Clothing tags, marketing materials, even old commercials that clearly show the cornucopia. Something doesn't add up. Then there are government documents, archived newspaper clippings, microfilms, and declassified files that reference people, places, or quotes which no longer exist in the official record. These are not just fan theories. These are documents stamped, filed, and dated. Many who stumble across them describe a jarring sense of dual reality, as if two timelines are bleeding into each other. Perhaps most haunting are personal relics, old family photos, handwritten journals, home videos. These private archives often contain details that contradict the reality outside one's doorstep. A brand name spelled the wrong way. A street sign with a name that's since changed without explanation. A toy, a commercial, a moment that no longer aligns with the mainstream record. These artifacts don't exist in isolation. They appear in clusters, found by multiple unrelated people across continents who share the same memory. The odds of all these memories being wrong, in the exact same way, are astronomically low, which raises the question, what are we really seeing? Are these simple anomalies, products of manufacturing inconsistencies, faulty data entry, or poor archival practices? Or are they echoes, resonances from alternate versions of reality that haven't been fully scrubbed? In quantum physics, there's a concept called decoherence, the process by which quantum systems lose their multiple potential outcomes and collapse into one observable state. But what if residue is a form of incomplete decoherence? A D moment when the collapse doesn't fully resolve. The system forgets to clean up a piece of the alternate timeline, leaving behind evidence like a cosmic fingerprint. This may sound fantastical, but it aligns with a growing number of reports. Reddit threads filled with photos, YouTube videos showcasing collections of vintage packaging, and even legal archives that appear to have been altered over time. These aren't just isolated pockets of confusion. They point toward a systemic pattern, one where memory and material occasionally refuse to align. Even skeptics find themselves intrigued. If a person has a clear memory of something and can back it up with physical evidence, however small, then we are forced to reconsider our assumptions about the nature of reality. Maybe the past isn't as fixed as we believe. Maybe history is more fluid, more fragile. The significance of residue goes beyond curiosity. It's a challenge, a call to reevaluate what we know. In a world that increasingly tells us, trust the data, residue asks us to also trust our senses, our experience, and, perhaps most importantly, our inner knowing. Because if reality is being rewritten, and if digital archives are no longer reliable, then these fragments, these stubborn leftovers of forgotten truths, might be the only keys we have left. Let's entertain a darker possibility. What if the Mandela Effect isn't random at all? What if it's a test, a carefully calibrated experiment in mass perception? Throughout history, governments and intelligence agencies have conducted covert operations to study, influence, and manipulate public belief. MKUltra used chemicals and psychological conditioning to explore mind control. Operation Mockingbird infiltrated mainstream media to shape narratives. The Stanford prison experiment revealed how quickly people adapt to assigned roles and accept altered realities. These are not theories, they're historical facts. Now imagine a version of those experiments running today, not with LSD and hidden microphones, but with likes, shares, and trending hashtags. The test subjects, all of us, the lab, the internet. Social media platforms are engineered for rapid information exchange. This makes them ideal for testing how misinformation spreads, how quickly consensus forms, and how perception can be molded. In real time, a meme goes viral, a TikTok creator shares a memory glitch, a Reddit thread surfaces an old book cover that doesn't match today's version. Within hours, millions of people are debating reality itself, and someone, or something, may be watching very closely. In a world increasingly governed by algorithms and artificial intelligence, it's no longer science fiction to consider that certain Mandela effects could be seeded deliberately to measure psychological response. Think about it. Change a small detail in a film, see who notices. Alter a logo slightly. Watch the discussions. Introduce a false quote in a popular textbook. Track how fast it spreads and who challenges it. This is perception elasticity in action. The goal? To see how far you can stretch collective memory before it snaps. To map the limits of belief. To find the boundary between what people accept and what they resist. The results of such an experiment would be priceless, not only for corporations selling narratives, but for governments looking to maintain ideological control. If you can influence how people remember the past, you can shape how they act in the future. You can create obedience, complacency, or confusion, all without firing a shot. This leads us to the concept of mass reality calibration. Just as your phone learns your preferences and your streaming service refines your recommendations, society as a whole may be undergoing a form of reality refinement. The more we accept altered memories, the more pliable we become. And if we challenge them, perhaps we're marked, categorized, studied, or even tested further. The disturbing part, we'd never know. The entire system is self-reinforcing. Those who remember differently are often ridiculed, labeled as confused, nostalgic, or conspiratorial. This gaslighting effect ensures that most people stay silent, unsure of their own perceptions, but the Mandela effect refuses to go away. Why? Because the changes are too widespread, too consistent, too eerily precise to dismiss as random mental glitches. And when multiple people in different parts of the world recall the same alternate reality, sometimes down to exact phrasing, color, shape, or detail, we are forced to consider the unthinkable, that we are participants in a global experiment on perception. Some even speculate that artificial intelligence itself may be running the show, not as a villain, but as a neutral observer. AI systems already track engagement, sentiment, and emotional reaction. What if an advanced AI is curating these effects to explore the human psyche? What if we're part of an evolving data model mapping the malleability of consciousness? It might sound dystopian, but in a world where algorithms know more about you than your own family, this idea is no longer far-fetched. And it leads to an urgent question. If we're being tested, how do we pass? We pass by remembering, by comparing notes, by refusing to dismiss intuition, by trusting the deep resonance that says, this is not how I remember it. Because in a reality shaped by algorithms and experiments, awareness is rebellion, conscious memory is resistance. And if the Mandela effect truly is a mass experiment in perception, then those who notice, those who remember, are not broken. They are awake. Awake. If logos and song lyrics can be altered, what about wars, presidents, entire nations? Some of the most startling Mandela effects involve major world events, instances that should be firmly etched in global memory. Yet thousands of people recall entirely different outcomes. For example, many claim to remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, years before his actual death in 2013. They recall televised funerals, international mourning, and news, reports that simply no longer exist. The phenomenon was so widespread, it gave the Mandela effect its name. Another strange case is that of President Thomas Whitmore. While skeptics point out he's a fictional character from the film Independence Day, some people vividly remember him as a real US president, with policy initiatives, speeches, and a cabinet. It's not just a face or name, it's a full political history that seems to have vanished. There are also alternate memories of major tragedies. Some recall different sequences or outcomes of the 9/11 attacks. Others remember the Challenger shuttle disaster occurring at a different time or with a different crew. These aren't isolated, fuzzy memories. They're collective recollections, often backed by specific emotional responses, family conversations, even diary entries. Then there are geographical anomalies. Some remember countries that no longer appear on maps, or cities in different locations than where they exist today. A few even claim to have visited places that are now missing from official records. If so many people are misremembering the same monumental events, it leads us to an unnerving possibility. What if history has already been changed, and we're only now catching up to the edit? The Mandela effect forces us to confront a reality where not even time is immune to revision. If timelines can be rewritten, no moment, no matter how significant, is safe from the shift. Maybe the Mandela effect isn't a mystery at all. Maybe it's a transition. We may be living through a reality shift, a slow but undeniable migration from one version of existence to another. Not a sudden leap, but a series of minor edits, like updates patching across a cosmic operating system. And the Mandela Effect? It's not the glitch, it's the sign. Some spiritual thinkers believe we are in the midst of a mass consciousness upgrade. As our collective frequency rises, we begin tuning into timelines that better reflect this elevated awareness. In these realities, certain details change, sometimes subtly, sometimes drastically, because the vibrational resonance of our previous reality no longer matches who we've become. Others propose a more technological explanation. We may be inside a simulated universe undergoing a reboot. In this theory, reality is code, and the Mandela Effect represents debugging, reprogramming, or even test scenarios. If that's true, every memory that no longer aligns with the current version might be a remnant from the previous version, an echo that survived the reset. Whatever the cause, the symptoms are clear. Growing cognitive dissonance, subtle alienation from familiar places, people sensing something is off, but unable to pinpoint it. These aren't just mental hiccups. They are felt deeply, emotionally, intuitively. It's like waking up in a familiar house where all the furniture has shifted slightly overnight. The most important realization is this: you are not going crazy. You are adapting. If reality is indeed morphing, then the Mandela Effect isn't a mistake. It's the invitation to wake up, to question, to participate. Because once you notice the pattern, it's hard to unsee it. What if those tiny discrepancies you've noticed, those moments where the world feels just a little off, aren't failures of the mind, but echoes of something much larger? What if you've never been misaligned, only misled by a system built to keep you asleep? The Mandela Effect, for all its quirks and curiosities, might be more than a glitch. It could be a signal, a soft knock from the universe asking, "Are you paying attention?" Reality, as we've explored, is fluid. It bends under the weight of perception, thought, intention, and belief. Whether you see it as a multiversal echo, an AI reprogramming, or a divine reconfiguration of collective consciousness, one thing is clear: we are not just passive observers. We are part of the design. So what can you do in the face of an unstable reality? You remember. You trust your intuition. You seek patterns. You compare notes with others. You write things down. You hold on to what feels true in your bones, even if the world says otherwise. Because those of us who remember, who feel the shift, are not crazy. We are awake. And that awareness, that knowing, may be the most powerful tool we have. What do you think about the shifts we've explored in this video? Have you ever personally experienced a Mandela Effect, or found residue that no one could explain? We'd love to hear your insights, memories, or even theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If this video opened your mind or helped you see reality in a new light, don't forget to like and subscribe to Top Hidden Knowledge so you never miss our next deep dive into mystery, perception, and the hidden workings of our universe. And if you have time, explore more videos on our channel. We're just getting started. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and never stop questioning the world around you.